Welcome to Long Lost Friends. I'm Elizabeth Eve King.
And I'm Andrea Goyan. Elizabeth and I used to do comedy together back when we were 19.
But we lost touch. Years later, we discovered each other and found out that I'd become a painter, a performer, a writer, a Pilates teacher, an animal lover, and a biologist.
Wait, I've become a painter, performer, writer, Pilates teacher, animal lover, and okay, I'm not a biologist, but we're long lost
friends.
And we're both speculative fiction writers.
And I've had my work in MetaStellar magazine.
MetaStellar, for those of you who don't know, is an online magazine that publishes original science fiction, horror, and fantasy. It's we've got a link below, and please check it out and subscribe for books, stories, writing tips, and more.
Today, we are so delighted to be talking to the Ernest Hogan. He's been called the father of Chicano science fiction, as well as a mad Mexican Hunter S. Thompson. But today, we're once again so delighted to be talking to the father of Chicano science fiction, Ernest Hogan. Ernest bridges the gap between hard science fiction and cyberpunk, interweaving pre-Columbian mythology, Spanish, Spanglish, and the Netali language into humorously dystopian sci-fi worlds with a distinctly Latin twist. He's been called a mad Mexican Hunter S. Thompson. I would think like just Mexican would be fine. Hunter S. Thompson's mad enough, right? He's the author of the novels High Aztec, Cortez on Jupiter, and Smoking Mirror Blues, and has a new story coming out in Speculative Fiction for Dreamers, a Latinx anthology.
We are so delighted to have him back again. But first, before we start talking about important writing things, Ernest, can you show us a pet?
Okay. Unfortunately, my wife had left a window open, and the lovely Wolfette had jumped out, and the two other guys are also outside wreaking havoc among the desert landscaping. So I do have this guy who hangs around in our thing. Dr. Seuss is a big influence on everybody. Actually, whether you know it or not, you're probably, if you're a writer, you're probably influenced by Dr. Seuss, just because that early thing in our culture. And Dr. Seuss is actually kind of a weirder guy than we think. You look at some of the stuff he's done; it's very strange and interesting. And but we do have if a cat runs into the room, I'll grab it and pull it up to the stream.
Okay, sounds like a good deal. In the meantime, we know that the cat in the hat is there.
The cat in the hat. Don't grab it by the tail.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So I was curious, because your new story is coming out in Speculative Fiction for Dreamers, a Latinx anthology, and in English, we're talking about gender neutral pronouns, and there's Latinx. And while I admire the idea of making pronouns gender neutral, I have tried writing in that way, and you can't understand it.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about that?
Oh God. Well, it's getting unusual. Where we're seeing this weird thing, and also suddenly I find myself kind of in the middle of it with the whole Latinx thing. The Chicken X, I've been told that it started with Brazilian trans people who decided to do that is because tried a way to degengerize their language. They felt more. It also kind of took off on the computers, and nobody really speaks that way. We're using the word is kind of popping up, though it's controversial. Basically being since I'm involved in Chicano writing through my column in La Bloga. It's a Latino literature blog, and every other week I write a column about science fiction or a fantasy or the other strange things having to do with what I call.
And there will be links to those.
Yeah, that would be great.
I just wanted
so basically that's what's gotten me known, and the whole Latinx thing, because a lot of I call myself a Chicano. I mostly because I'm it lets you know where I'm from and when I was from. I can basically cut through all that. It's what I guess I say identify as. Which I kind of hate that term too. But but at the same time, I'm willing to work with Latinos, and it's interesting. Chicanos, we tend to see ourselves as natives, and Latinos see themselves as immigrants. That kind of is one of the dividing lines. Also, Chicano is kind of more of an obnoxious radical type stance. Latinos are a little more respectable, but though the Latinos tend to have connections in academia and publishing, and are able to get like anthologies published and all that. And so if some Latinos come to me and say, "Hey, how'd you like to be published?" I usually say, "Hey, yeah, people want to publish me, and it's going to give me money. I don't care who they are." Fact is, I've actually even appeared in a Afrofuturist anthology, so I guess that makes me an Afrofuturist too. I'm always breaking down the barriers here. So we did, but basically there's a lot of my Chicano fellow Chicano writers, and it's, I mean, the few times I've been in a sort of like a table having dinner with a whole bunch of them, it's always great because we have so much in common and have all these things to talk about. They're kind of get asked me, "Oh my God, what are you doing with those East Coast guys? They're not there." And I tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna get published, man. That's what I'm supposed to do, huh?" And but I could call it all the Latinoid continuum, which is it's a sort of large thing, and I keep throwing the word Latinoid out there, though nobody else seen it. Well, somebody told me they liked it on Twitter a few weeks ago. So but it doesn't seem to be catching on. People keep throwing out alternatives there. And I think the Latin, it started out as Latin O/A, but they couldn't figure out whether to put the O or the A first. I noticed it kept trying, and so then they came up with doing the circle A, and I was actually in this anthology here, and you can see it's and I have a story in there, and this is how it ended up being published as. It later got it later was re-released under this title because it moved so fast. Same book, same thing. Just the X got changed, and that was sort of the thing there. And so and also basically now this is my more the. And this says that you can see down here it says a Latinx anthology, and so it's changed so fast we're not quite sure about that. I think the old Chicanos are probably going to have to adjust there. Though I keep seeing people are trying to revive the term Chicano, and with me I kind of like it because it basically they compared me to Hunter S. Thompson. You've heard that, but I also a lot of Latinx academics think that I'm carrying on in the tradition of Oscar Zeta Acosta. He was Hunter Thompson's sidekick companion, Dr. Gonzo. And though okay, I couldn't think of a guy who in real life is any more different than me. I'm thin. He's fat. He was fat. I'm not a drug crazed lunatic. I experimented enough with drugs when I was younger, so I can write about it with authority. But I after all realized, messing up with your brain that way is probably not a good thing. And I kind of look at Hunter Thompson's later years, and he ended up blowing his brains out, and I thought, yeah, that didn't sound good. But that is what's really got me going there. There is that though I don't. Yes, I say I'm caught in the middle of a weird conflict there, where I'm sort of negotiating between the Chicanos and the Latinxes, and another thing about Latinx is that it's almost becoming like a futuristic term. I think, especially with this anthology, it's kind of like I was hoping we'd come up with our version of Afrofuturism. And I kept throwing different words out there, and again, none of them stuck. But it might actually become like the futuristic term for us all. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see. Do you think it makes like, because you've talked, do you think Chicano then is sort of going down? Do you think that causes divisions with the community, like Latinx, Chicano, who am I?
It probably, but to say that there is a definite divide. I say the immigrant versus the native mentality, and that definitely makes you're thinking there. There's a definite resistance, especially around LA. We've got this sort of I've heard from people from LA and Tijuana telling me, you got to get rid of that Latinx thing and all that, and but it's probably going to remain as sort of like a unique stance within it all. I think so too, because I noticed the immigrants come in, and after a few years they start acting like Chicanos, and and a lot of the style that we've created and all that. But also it's changed. Pachucos from the 40s weren't anything like the Vatos Locos of the 70s, and so I imagine even both of those probably are scratching their heads at the Latinxes of the 21st century. So we and the sort of things I say about it. We're a volatile, bubbling cauldron of cultures, and we're always coming up with new stuff. New ways we express ourselves, and every generation literally is creating its own thing, and it's up to us to see what the new generation comes up with, and just tell them how we've done it. Like I once was Rudy Garcia, who is another writer. The death song of the dragon Chuchulub is a novel. It's out right now, and once we were at an event at a university, and this little girl, she I think she was still in grade school, so came up, she wanted to be a Chicano writer, and she wanted to know what were the rules, and we kind of looked at each other and goes, you can do whatever you want, honey. It was, and she kind of looked at us and kind of scratched her head, but that's kind of the weird world I live in.
Well, it's interesting listening because I hadn't really thought about this before till you were talking. But I mean, it's like having teenage kids, and every teenager wants to defy their parents and come up with their own set of rules. And it's sort of like the language keeps changing that way too with each generation, trying to find their own identity and their own rules.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and I mean the always probably right Latinx literature, whatever. I mean, it mixes so much history and mythology and just day-to-day magic stuff that is just more prevalent in Mexico, personally. I mean, but Latinx covers every place that could be. What about Spain? Is that?
Okay, that is the Hispanics, and it's interesting about Hispanic in New Mexico, and also my father's family comes from New Mexico, so I've got like connections there. Also, my mother-in-law loved New Mexico, so my wife and I would take her back there before she died every summer, and we'd enjoy that too. They have this thing called the Hispanos, and a Hispano is someone who is not necessarily Mexican, but basically of Spanish background. And that is kind of different from slightly, it's overlap, they all overlap, but there's no clear borders between any of these things. A Hispano is maybe very fair-skinned, they speak Spanish, or at least have connections with that culture. And in New Mexico, there was actually a lot of because it was basically New Mexico was founded by conquistadors back way back before the United States existed, and the conquistador statues are now being torn down and all that. It's because basically what's a lot of the stuff the conquistadors doing is stranger than the most outrageous horror stories, but we'll talk to that later. But they said they have this whole thing with the Hispanic. Also, you look back in the early 19th century literature, they would talk about all these people in the West, which actually wasn't the West, was outside the United States back then, as Spanish. They would call them Spanish. Similar to the way East Coast people will call a Spanish-speaking Black person who lived down the street that is a Spanish person. I've seen that, and it's a very weird thing. But the Hispanic identity is basically a very different thing. And but yes, they overlap. And I notice a lot of people who like hardly anybody outside of New Mexico calls themselves a Hispano. It's a very different thing. I've also, I see a lot of very fair-skinned people from Mexico, and they don't call themselves Hispanics. They don't use that. Though also Hispanic is the term used by law enforcement to describe brown-skinned suspects that they're looking for. I find it mostly in like wanted posters and all that. They have this whole thing for Hispanics. Latino is what show business uses to describe this sexy celebrity that they're trying to sell. So it's it's like, whoa, we've got all these different things, and showbiz will only use Chicano if they think it's hip in that situation. I don't think they've done that. And but though there's actually no master control for all this telling us what is a thing. Yes, I work for the Phoenix Public Library, and I once went to a seminar on basically the politically correct terms and trying to do that and everything. And basically what the cities, and I think that's what they wait for somebody to sue them, and then they make up the rules about it. So this is the world where you're gonna when you've offended somebody, and they'll do that. So I'm not sure how it's going to end. We've got all this weird stuff going on, but yeah, I say it but also it gives you all these interesting little conflicts and all that makes for if you're writing fiction, that's great. You also you can write a story with you could have a character who's a Chicano, a character who's a Latinx, and a character who's a Hispano, and have them all be very different people and very and that what would they have to talk about? What would they disagree on? What would they that is the stuff of fiction.
Yeah, that's great. That's really interesting stuff, because I always think about that and some people are good. Some people get really offended if the wrong word is used,
and people never know what to call me. I've been with my hair. I was younger. I wore my hair kind of out like that and everything, and frankly, I've been called the N-word so many times. I tend to think they're talking about me when I hear it, and actually, my wife once added to that, yeah, and you're usually right, and it's been really. I was working at a bookstore, and this woman came in complaining about the Black guy, and it's kind of funny, but okay, not only did she talk about this, we figured out when this incident happened, it probably was me, but she didn't. I was standing there in front of her, and she didn't recognize me. So in her memory, the Black guy probably got blacker than so it kind of shows how weird people's perceptions are and everything.
That's actually kind of a profound story, really.
Yeah, it is.
Because she was obviously viewing some boogeyman in her mind, and it had no relation to you, really.
Yeah, but also it's where I live from. I people talk, because I talk. Well, I remember another writer talking about how you've got to if you're going to label a person by race, you got to label all the people by race. And I kind of, the space I come from, I never know what people think, because there are people. A few times I've been thought of as white. Usually I was on an Indian reservation. They think I'm white. But. I know people think I'm Black. People could think I'm Mexican. I've been told I look more Arab than I do Mexican. By an Arab. So as a bookstore clerk, I knew that the Quran was spelled with a Q. So this one guy kept coming in and asking me all these questions about, and I would take him to the book with all the Islamic stuff and all that. And at one point, then he asked me, well, what part of the Middle East are you from? And I said, East LA. And he was like, and then he stopped coming in and talking to me. So I don't know what.
Yeah, that's so funny. Thank you so much for talking to us. This has been enlightening and interesting and also fun.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you. And we want to end with the best things we learned this week. I'll probably start, right?
You always do.
Someday I'll let you start. Okay. What do I want to say? So I thought this was interesting. In hospitals now, they were looking at sharks and they're saying sharks are, a lot of fish get a lot of parasites. In fact, Andrea was just talking about one that replaces the tongue of a fish. But a lot of fish, if you scuba dive or snorkel, you'll see they have a lot of parasites on them. But sharks don't. Sharks never have parasites. Why is that? Well, it's because if you look at a shark skin, microscopically, it has these little dips and rough things that you can't see, but that bacteria and parasites have a hard time clinging onto. So they're going to start trying to do that on hospital surfaces, making them really, microscopically bumpy so that parasites and germs can't cling on so well.
That's so cool. You can always have the coolest things, Elizabeth. Kind of in the same realm, but not. I was reading that barnacles on sea turtles move. So they always thought barnacles kind of were stable and they cemented themselves in place and they stayed there. And they discovered that on sea turtles, they very slowly, it's like they said they sort of melt the cement under them and sort of glide on the cement to the next spot. But we're talking, it takes 16 months to move the distance of a thumb, of an adult thumb. So it's very slow moving, but it's pretty interesting. They think they go to find better food sources.
Oh, that is interesting. On the backs of turtles, you're saying?
You know what? I saw a picture. There was even one that was on a head of a turtle, which I thought was really awful for that poor turtle, but they move around. So
hopefully it'll move off the head, because
I know.
Put your head in, could you?
Well, do sea turtles put their heads in? I don't know enough about sea turtles. I was thinking about that. Do they put? I don't think they do.
Put their head in, but they have the ability.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they do when they get attacked. That's something to look up.
I've never seen them. I've seen them. I've been in cleaning stations. That's so cool. Where the little fish are all cleaning them. Your turn.
Your turn, Ernest.
My turn. Okay. Well, actually, mine is a memory that suddenly popped up for reasons I don't know. I had totally blocked it out for years. Is that and this was way back in those depressed phase of my life after High Aztec crashed and all that, is that my agent had tried to give me a job writing for DC Comics, and of course it ended up not going anywhere, and they had tried to, it was a comic book Animal Man, which I kind of noticed has gone the way of the dinosaur, and I bought a bunch of copies and read it and thought, oh my God, I really don't like this very much. So if I get this gig, it's going to be kind of I'm not sure how I'm going, how I can make this mine, but I guess I kept thinking, it used to be that if somebody had written for comics, the publishing world didn't think that they didn't think of anything of it. It was like, you come back to us when you've sold to a real publisher. Though it's working at a library and I keep looking at all these things. And nowadays, along with saying that a young writer has a degree in creative writing from such and such a university, the other thing they often say is that they've written for Marvel or DC, and so I thought, if that would have happened, I could have just done that. Probably might have opened a few doors for me, but unfortunately it didn't. And I had basically totally blocked that out. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I might end up doing something in comics in the future. But
yeah, that would be cool. Because they do say like graphic novels. Speaking of language, that's the word they use all the time now, right? And I think of Neil Gaiman, because he's done a lot of graphic novels.
But I think he might have started out in graphic novels.
Yeah,
That's how we got to start. Yeah, Sandman, I think.
Sandman.
So yeah. So the world,
Yeah.
yes. But I remember it used to be, you said someone, did something in comics, the publishers just would turn their nose up at it and all that. But now that's like the way they get your foot in the door and all that. So that,
Yeah.
Oh, right. Now that's like high art form suddenly, comics.
center of Western civilization.
It is. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Maria and Alex Korloff, for editing and hosting. We couldn't do it without you.
We could not. And we want to encourage all of our listeners to go and like our videos and leave comments below, because we'd love to know what you're thinking. And be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification button so you won't miss any episodes. And if you'd like to help support MetaStellar, there's a Patreon page below, and you can go there. And all of the people who help out and do things for MetaStellar are all volunteers, so none of us are seeing that money. That money goes to authors. It goes to our original fiction. So if you want to help support more fiction showing up on the magazine, come and help us out, support us. So thank you so much. We're delighted you came to listen, and we're so happy, Ernest, that you were able to join us. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye.